Welcome, Wanderalv Stories. You have stepped into Echoed Enigmas, where every tale holds a heartbeat and every whisper hides a truth. If these are the stories you've been searching for, subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a secret waiting to be told. Now, take a deep breath and let the echoes begin. The bronze plaques of the Benin Palace gleamed, reflecting a sun as fierce as the Oba's power. Yet, for Queen Iroha, the splendor felt like a cage. She was the first wife, revered and wealthy, but profoundly lonely. Her days were a tapestry of rituals and judgments, devoid of genuine warmth. From her elevated veranda, she watched the palace life hum below. Traders, guards, and slaves moved in choreographed patterns. It was then she saw him. He was new, part of a recent tribute from a lesser village, assigned to the royal gardens. He moved with a grace that belied his status, his muscles coiling as he tended the sacred yams. His name, she learned by asking a handmaiden, was Efe. He looked up, just once, his gaze colliding with hers across the courtyard. It was not a look of subservience, but of sharp, shocking recognition. Iroha felt a jolt, a forbidden heat that bypassed her title and struck her core. He was a slave, forbidden property. Yet in that single glance, he saw her not as a queen, but as a woman. The air in the palace suddenly felt thin, charged with a new, dangerous energy. The seeds of scandal were sown in that one silent, shared moment. Iroha quickly turned away, her heart pounding against her coral beads. The image of his eyes, dark and knowing, was burned into her mind. She knew with dreadful certainty that this was only the beginning. 3 days passed, each one stretching Iroha's composure to its limit. She found herself inventing reasons to walk near the gardens, a place she usually avoided. She told her attendants she wished to inspect the herbs for the Oba's evening meal, a task far beneath her, but one that offered a plausible excuse. Ife was there, tending to the bitter leaf plants. She stopped, feigning curiosity. "The leaves look weak this season," she remarked, her voice impressively steady. Ife did not prostrate himself fully, a minor but noticeable breach. He simply knelt on one knee. "Perhaps they lack the right company, my queen," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. The impertinence was shocking, yet thrilling. It was a shared secret, spoken aloud. Just then, Nosagi, her most trusted lady-in-waiting, glided to her side. Nosagi's eyes, sharp as obsidian shards, flickered from the queen to the slave. She had seen the queen's flushed cheeks, the way her breath caught. She had noticed the frequency of these garden inspections. Nosagi said nothing, but her silence was heavy with judgment and a budding, jealous calculation. The first whispers of impropriety began to circle the inner court, disguised as concern for the queen's sudden interest in horticulture. The scandal was no longer a secret emotion. It was becoming a palpable suspicion. The suspicion in the air forced Iroha's hand. The risk of being watched was high, but the desire to speak with Efe freely was overwhelming. That night, she used her authority. She dismissed her attendants, claiming a need for solitary meditation in the small walled shrine at the back of her compound. It was a sacred space no one would dare interrupt. Then she sent a loyal, mute servant to fetch Efe, instructing him to use the hidden passage meant for the Oba alone. When Efe entered the shrine, lit only by a flickering palm oil lamp, the air crackled. They stood inches apart,
the scent of garden soil and royal perfumes mingling. "You risk your life," Iroha whispered, her hands trembling. "My life was forfeit the day I was captured," Efe replied, his gaze intense. "But I did not truly live until I saw you." The admission hung between them, heavier than the humid night air. He reached out, slowly, and brushed his thumb against a stray coral bead on her neck. The touch was electric, a profound taboo broken. "This is madness," she breathed. "Then let us be mad," he said, before capturing her lips. It was a kiss of desperation, a collision of two worlds. In that shrine, she was not a queen, and he was not a slave. They were just a man and a woman, sealing their fate.
Nosagi's jealousy had festered. She had been the queen's confidant for years, hoping to leverage that closeness for her own family's advancement. This sudden distraction, this slave, was an insult. Nosagi did not dare accuse the queen of an affair. Such a claim, if unproven, meant her own death. Instead, she sought out the Esogon, the chief priest of the kingdom. She approached him with deep humility, framing her concerns as spiritual. "Great one," she whispered, her eyes downcast, "our queen is unwell. She wanders the gardens alone, dismisses her loyal attendants, and her spirit seems clouded." She subtly mentioned the new garden slave, Efe, suggesting he might be the source of a dark influence or bewitchment. The Esogon, who saw tradition as the pillar of the kingdom, was alarmed. A distracted queen was a spiritual imbalance. He had already noted Iroha's recent inattentiveness during key rituals. He assured Nosagi he would observe the queen personally. The net began to tighten. It was no longer just court gossip. It was now a matter of state and spirit. Iroha's secret love was about to be interpreted as a dark curse, a far more dangerous accusation than mere infidelity. The scandal was escalating towards a deadly climax.
The trysts became more frantic, stolen in the dead of night, fueled by the growing danger. Iroha and Efe knew they were being watched. The air of the palace was thick with scrutiny. During one precious, hurried meeting in an old storage room, Iroha presented her plan. "I cannot free you outright," she explained, her voice low and urgent. "The Esogon watches me too closely, but I can arrange for you to be sold to a merchant acting on my behalf." Her plan was to use her personal wealth, the vast tributes of coral and palm oil she commanded, to buy his freedom indirectly. Once owned by her proxy, he would be transported far north to a small, fertile estate she had already secured. "It is remote," she said, grasping his hands. "You will be a free man, a landowner, and I will find reasons to travel, to visit the northern shrines. We can be together there, away from these walls." It was a desperate, flimsy hope. It required immense trust and flawless execution. Efe saw the flaws, the risk of discovery, but he also saw the love in her eyes. "I will go where you send me," he vowed. "My heart is yours, whether in chains or in freedom." Before Iroha's plan could be enacted, the Esogan struck. Acting on Nosagi's vision that the slave had passed a cursed amulet to the queen, the temple guard stormed the royal gardens at midday. Efe was seized, his arms bound cruelly behind his back. He did not resist. Iroha, hearing the commotion from her veranda, rushed out, her mask of composure shattering. "By what right do you take a servant of the palace?" she demanded, her voice shaking with rage and fear. The Esogan emerged from the shadow of the gate, his staff of office held high. "By the right of the gods, my queen," he intoned, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "This man has bewitched you. He has clouded your spirit and endangered the kingdom. He will be purified by fire at dawn." The court gasped. This was a direct challenge to Iroha's authority. Nosagi watched from the sidelines, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. Iroha was roughly escorted back to her chambers, a prisoner in her own home. She had sought to love a slave, and instead she had just condemned him to death. The scandal had reached its breaking point.
The morning air was cold and heavy. Efe was dragged to the center of the palace courtyard, the pyre of dry wood waiting. The Esogban began the rites of purification, chanting loudly for the crowd of nobles and servants forced to watch. Queen Iroha was present, held firmly by two guards, her face a mask of stone. Just as the Esogban raised his torch, Efe's voice boomed, silencing the prayers. "You cannot execute the son of Oba Overran," he roared. A collective shock silenced the courtyard. He ripped his tunic open, revealing not a slave's markings, but a complex tattoo spiraling over his heart. The royal crest of the Igala, a neighboring kingdom Benin had subjugated 2 decades prior. "I am Prince Kaelo," he shouted, his eyes finding Iroha's. "I was sent here not as a slave, but as an observer, to learn your court's weaknesses. My identity was hidden for my safety." The twist was stunning. He was no mere slave. He was a political hostage of immense value, masquerading as property. "My only weakness," he continued, his voice softening as he looked at Iroha, "was one I did not anticipate." He had been a spy, but his mission had been irrevocably compromised by genuine love. The Esogban froze, his torch sputtering. This was not a cleansing, it was an execution of royalty.
The courtyard was in chaos. To execute a foreign prince, even a hidden one, was an act of war. The Esogban looked to the Oba, who remained silent, his face unreadable. This was Iroha's moment. She stepped forward, her guards parting before her renewed authority. "He speaks the truth," she declared, her voice ringing with power. "His bewitchment was a confession. He revealed his identity to me, seeking an alliance." She spun the narrative with breathtaking speed. "He sought me out, offering peace between the Igala and Benin, to be sealed by a union." She turned to face the stunned court. I agreed. This was not a sordid affair, but a delicate negotiation. The Esogban, in his zeal, nearly destroyed a new alliance. She had turned the scandal into a diplomatic triumph. The Oba, seeing a path that avoided war and strengthened his reign, nodded slowly. "So it shall be." Efe, now Prince Kaelo, was unbound. Nosaji's face turned ashen as she realized her error. Iroha had achieved her goal in the most audacious way. She had loved a slave, and in doing so had transformed him back into a prince, binding him to her not just by love, but by a public, undeniable royal decree. He became her consort, a juicy, scandalous prize won.
Remember this tale, for the ancestors whisper this truth. A person's worth is never measured by the chains they are given, nor by the crown they must carry. It is found in the truth that sleeps in the heart. For when the fires of judgment rise, it is courage that gives that truth a voice. And a single voice, speaking its truth, can silence an army and rewrite a destiny.
And so another echo fades into silence. For now, what truth did this story whisper to your heart? Share it with us in the comments below, for your words are what keep these echoes alive. If you haven't yet, subscribe and ring the bell. Let your heart be ready, for the next secret we uncover is never far away. This has been Echoed Enigmas, where every ending is simply a new beginning.